Most people think debt is just numbers on a screen, but bad debt behaves more like a monster. Let me ask you something. If your debt disappeared tomorrow, how different would your life actually be? Because for millions of people, debt isn't just a number, it's the thing quietly destroying their financial future. And the worst part, most people are trying to fight this monster the wrong way. In America, debt has become so normal that most people barely stop to question it. Credit cards, car loans, student loans, buy now, pay later plans, mortgages so large they shape the next 30 years of your life. It all gets presented as ordinary, mature, responsible, even inevitable. By the end of 2025, total household debt in the United States had climbed to about $18.8 trillion. Mortgage balances stood around $13.2 trillion, auto loans around $1.66 trillion, student loans around $1.66 trillion, and credit card balances around $1.28 trillion. When numbers get that big, people stop seeing debt as a warning sign and start seeing it as wallpaper. That is the first trap, not the interest rate, not the payment, the normalization. A bigger car because the payment fits, a vacation on a credit card because you will figure it out later, a house payment so high it quietly controls your entire budget. None of this feels dramatic in the moment. That is why it works so well on people. I am not judging you. I'm judging the decision because debt always asks the same question. How much of your future are you willing to sell for something you want right now? And before you can answer that honestly, you have to separate the debt that can serve you from the debt that slowly eats you alive. Not all debt is equal. That part matters. A mortgage is the cleanest example of debt that can make sense. Mortgage rates are usually far lower than credit card rates, and there is a real asset behind the loan. For many families, a mortgage is a structured way to buy a useful long-term asset instead of renting forever. But even good debt becomes bad debt when the size of it starts running your life. If the house owns your cash flow, your margin, your peace of mind, and every future decision, then the label matters less than the outcome. The same logic applies to education. This is where people get emotional, and fair enough, because education debt is one of the most politically charged types of debt in America. Student loans can be leverage if they lead to a valuable skill and a meaningful increase in earning power. A useful degree that leads to a strong income can accelerate a life. But a bad degree, a half-finished program, or a borrowed amount that never matches the income on the other side can turn that same debt into a financial sinkhole. Americans now carry roughly $1.66 trillion in student loan balances. In other words, for some people, education debt is a ladder. For others, it is a hole with no bottom. You have to ask one boring question. Does this debt increase your options or reduce them? Does it create future cash flow or consume it? Or does it simply pull future income into the present so you can feel richer for 5 minutes? And that brings us to the real villain, because the debt destroying most people is not the mortgage and it is not the carefully chosen education plan. It is consumer debt. Consumer debt is the monster. Credit card balances, personal loans, auto loans taken out on depreciating assets, retail financing. The sort of debt that makes your life feel manageable this month while quietly making next year weaker. Credit cards are the clearest example. According to the CFPB, about 208 million Americans have credit cards in their financial lives. According to the New York Fed, credit card balances reached roughly $1.28 trillion by the end of 2025. This is mainstream American life. And the reason it becomes so destructive is simple. The card companies do not need you to fail dramatically. They just need you to stay comfortably stuck. Minimum payments do the psychological heavy lifting. They make debt feel survivable. They make a large balance look polite. They create the illusion that you are handling it when really you are renting your own past decisions month after month. This is where a lot of people reach for the wrong explanation. They say, I just need more income. Maybe. More income helps everything, but people with good income stay buried in consumer debt all the time because this is not only an income problem, it is a behavior problem with an income accent. Dave Ramsey has built an entire brand around that idea, and whether you agree with every detail of his system or not, he is right about the core issue. People do not stay trapped because they cannot do math. They stay trapped because they keep repeating the behavior that created the debt in the first place. Bad debt almost never arrives as one giant catastrophe. It grows through small decisions that felt reasonable when you made them. A nicer car because the old one still worked but no longer matched the life you thought you should have. A few thousand on a credit card because the monthly payment looked small enough to tolerate. A furniture plan with 0% financing that somehow multiplied into 5 other monthly obligations. A little buy now, pay later here. A balance transfer there. A lifestyle upgrade because everybody around you seems to be living better than you are. None of these choices feels like a life-changing mistake. That is exactly why they are so dangerous. Then one day, people look up and realize their income is already assigned before the month even starts. Mortgage, car, credit cards, insurance, student loans, subscriptions, a little eating out because they are stressed, and suddenly every raise disappears before it has a chance to become progress. Imagine someone earning $4,000 a month, $700 car payment, $400 credit cards, $300 student loans before the month even starts. I made versions of this mistake myself years ago, and maybe you have too. Nothing dramatic, just enough small leaks to keep real progress from happening. Money doesn't disappear. You spend it. Sometimes you spend it directly, sometimes you spend it through interest because old decisions keep reaching into your checking account. Either way, the result is the same. Future options get smaller, and this is the part where most people are finally ready for the boring answer. If you want to kill bad debt, the first rule is brutally simple. Stop feeding it. No new credit card balances, no financing, lifestyle purchases, no pretending the next month will be magically more disciplined if this month was not. That may sound obvious, but obvious is not the same thing as easy. This isn't exciting, that's why it works. You cannot drain a tub while the faucet is still running. The first victory is not the payoff. It is the decision that the balance stops growing here. Then you need a plan to attack what is already there. This is where Dave Ramsey's debt snowball still deserves attention, because even people who argue about the math usually admit the psychology is strong. You line up your non-mortgage consumer debts from smallest balance to largest. You make minimum payments on everything except the smallest one. Then you throw every extra dollar at that smallest balance until it is gone. After that, you roll the freed up payment into the next debt. Then the next, then the next. Behavior beats elegant theory more often than people want to admit, and that is why quick wins matter. When the first debt dies, something changes. Not just in the spreadsheet, in your head. You stop feeling cursed and start feeling dangerous. Momentum matters. Progress matters. You do the boring stuff. It works. Once consumer debt is gone, money feels different. The paycheck that used to arrive already wounded finally has room to breathe. Dollars that once vanished into minimum payments and interest charges can finally do something useful. Build an emergency fund, start investing, buy time, buy options. Most people think wealth begins the moment you start buying assets. In reality, it often begins much earlier when your money simply stops leaking into bad liabilities, but this is where many people slip. They get out of debt and think the job is done. It is not. Debt freedom without cash reserves is fragile. One unexpected bill, one job interruption, one emergency, and the entire structure can collapse, pulling you right back into the same hole you fought so hard to escape. Killing debt is step one. Staying out of it requires something else. Margin. Getting out of bad debt is not the finish line, it is the starting line. Once the debt monster is gone, the next milestone is building your first serious financial buffer. The first $10,000. That number matters more than people think. It represents stability, it represents control, and it changes the way you make financial decisions. So If you want the next step after killing bad debt, watch the video on your screen where I break down the exact strategy to save your first $10,000 even if you are starting from zero. Click that video now and I will show you how to build the financial foundation most people never manage to create.